The movie begins with a mother walking with her son Cho, and on a rainy day upon arriving home, they share a meal together, and we notice that the boy wears a blindfold and has a prosthetic leg. The mother insists that he always keep his eyes covered and never remove the blindfold. Soon after, they're interrupted by the arrival of the abusive father. He accuses him of trying to escape and start a new life without him. With disgust, he questions whether the kid will become human simply by covering his eyes. He threatens to harm him and even suggests ripping out his eyes to fix him. As the tension rises, the man begins to violently assault the mother, having had enough. Cho finally intervenes, ignoring his mother's orders. He removes the blindfold from his eyes. Cho! And then calmly approaches his father, who exits the house in a trance-like state, walking backwards. He continues in this manner until he reaches a crowded street, where he suddenly stops, standing face to face with his son still in a trance. The man slowly twists his own neck with his bare hands and takes his own life. Later on, we find the mother tearfully caressing Cho, and when suddenly she tries to strangle him. Mere moments later, he puts her into a trance as well and stops her from killing him. He then makes his mother walk into a riverbank, where she has a breakdown once she wakes up from the trance. At this point, it's revealed that he possesses the power to control people's minds by simply looking at them. We then fast forward to Cho as an adult who has become an antisocial loner. He's become a bitter person with a hatred for society, likely because he hasn't had an easy life. He makes use of his supernatural powers to steal money from rich businesses, banks, and to get anything he wants. Basically, at the end of the day, he uses the stolen money to stay in random hotel rooms, hiding himself from the world until his next robbery. The story then shifts to 𝐂𝐡𝐢𝐬, who works at a scrapyard with Koreans and foreigners alike. His best friends include Ali and Baba from Turkey and Ghana, respectively. One evening after work, he spends his birthday with friends at a theme park. While getting off the car, 𝐂𝐡𝐢𝐬 is violently run over by an approaching vehicle and is rushed over to the hospital. By the next day, it turns out that he's making a relatively quick recovery, which leaves everyone surprised. Unfortunately, his friends deliver the news that he has been fired from his job. Following this cue, Nam scours the newspaper for job listings every day. By chance, he comes across a job opening at a pawn shop named 𝐓𝐡𝐢𝐬. Upon visiting, he finds the place dark and shady, but the boss warmly welcomes him. It's revealed that this pawn shop is owned by 𝐂𝐨𝐧𝐭 and his daughter, 𝐂𝐨𝐬. He gives him a rundown on how they operate, before mentioning that money has been disappearing on its own lately from the shop. Although there's a surveillance camera installed, no one has been caught on tape. The following day, 𝐂𝐡𝐢𝐬 arrives at his new workplace. There he meets 𝐂𝐨𝐬, who shares that she's preparing to become a stewardess. The two engage in a friendly conversation and become fast friends. Later that day, 𝐂𝐡𝐢𝐬's friends Boba and Ali pay him a visit at the shop. They all hang out together, including the boss and 𝐂𝐨𝐬. However, their gathering is suddenly interrupted by showing who has likely arrived to rob them. He makes everyone stop dead in their tracks as he steps inside the shop. At this moment, we see the first real demonstration of his power and learn that he can control multiple people simultaneously with just his eyes. He makes people lose control over their thoughts and actions and even erase their memories of him. Moments later, the boss, still in a daze, walks over to the safe to bring out the money. In the meantime, 𝐂𝐡𝐢𝐬 starts to feel uneasy, as if he cannot move any part of his body. However, he slowly breaks free from the mind control, only to see everyone around him hypnotized. It turns out that he is immune to such mind-controlling abilities, and it has no power over him at all. Although initially in disbelief, Cho quickly takes control of the situation. He manipulates Ali and Baba to attack 𝐂𝐡𝐢𝐬 and even makes 𝐂𝐨𝐬 stab him in the back. Our hero bravely tries to fight back, but he is eventually tasered and electrocuted several times. In the aftermath of this incident, he and his boss are rushed to the hospital. The latter tragically passes away, but 𝐂𝐡𝐢𝐬 recovers almost immediately, leaving everyone baffled. On the other hand, Cho is seen experimenting with his powers, trying to understand how a normal human resisted them. He cannot believe that someone got out of his powerful trance. Afterward, 𝐂𝐡𝐢𝐬, along with Ali and Boba, tried to retrieve the surveillance footage for evidence, but Cho arrives at the shop as well for the same footage. He has brought along a large group of people under his control to capture them. Sensing the danger, Ali and Boba immediately run away from there, while 𝐂𝐡𝐢𝐬 hides with the surveillance tape. But Cho refuses to give up and continues to attack him, using the hypnotized people. Soon after, their confrontation takes them to the streets, where Cho finds himself alone with no one in sight to manipulate. He desperately looks for people, but to no avail. Witnessing this cue, Nam realizes that he needs to see people in order to control them, taking advantage of the opportunity. He pursues them in a van until they reach a dead end. 𝐂𝐡𝐢𝐬 then gets out of the van to directly confront him, but soon finds himself surrounded by a group of hypnotized men. The men steadily approach him, armed with broken bottles. But before they can launch their attack, 𝐂𝐨𝐬 uses his taser to shock Cho in breaking his control over the others. Following this, he catches up to 𝐂𝐸 and covers his head to prevent him from using his mind control power. He then takes him to the police station, hoping they'll believe him. However, his plan backfires as the police don't buy his story. They instead think that he's on some kind of drug 𝐂𝐈 desperately tries to warn them against lifting the cover off, showing his head. But the cops ignore him and take it off, allowing 𝐂𝐸 to regain his powers. He wastes no time and immediately hypnotizes all the cops. He even makes one of the policemen shoot 𝐂𝐈, but the latter manages to dodge it. Following this 𝐂𝐈 pursues Cho into a crowded railway station. At one point he corners him and launches his attack on him, unaware of the risk posed to innocent people around them. In a desperate move, 𝐂𝐸 makes a mother throw her baby onto the tracks just as a train approaches. Seeing this, 𝐂𝐈 instinctively jumps to save the baby, but collides with the side of the speeding train in the process. In the aftermath, 𝐂𝐸 leaves him to die at the railway station and flees the scene. But as expected, 𝐂𝐈 not only survives, but manages to heal himself in no time. Meanwhile, 𝐂𝐸 heads back to the hotel where he's been laying low, only to find it swarming with police. Fearing that he might get caught, he decides to do something inhumane. He hypnotizes the cops present there and makes them shoot each other. This eliminates them all in a brutal fashion. Elsewhere, 𝐕 realizes that 𝐂𝐸 is a dangerous individual who can resort to killing thousands of people to get what he wants. So he decides to finish him off once and for all. 𝐂𝐈 then reaches out to his buddies 𝐈 and 𝐵oba and briefs them about the situation. They immediately agree to help him as they know the city is in danger. Following some planning, 𝐈 modifies an old van and devises a makeshift flare gun to blind 𝐂𝐸. In the meantime, 𝐂𝐸 attracts the attention of the authorities, leading to an investigation. But when they reach his mother's house, he swiftly eliminates them. 𝐂𝐸 then confronts his mother and even considers killing her. However, he refrains from doing so and instead leaves her with a large sum of money that he had stolen from the bank earlier. Meanwhile, the three drive around in their modified van determined to find 𝐂𝐸 and bring an end to the chaos as they drive. 𝐂𝐈 unexpectedly falls asleep and wakes up to find 𝐵oba attacking 𝐈 under Queen's control. They stop by a nearby apartment complex, suspecting that he might be using his powers from a location where he can see them. True to their suspicions, our hero catches a glimpse of choking and starts to chase him, leaving 𝐈 and 𝐵oba waiting in the van inside the apartment. 𝐂𝐈 discovers all the residents in a trance-like state 𝐂𝐸. He uses his powers to communicate with them through the voices of these people. He goes on to blame 𝐂𝐈 for the deaths that have occurred, asserting that none of this would have happened if he had just left him alone. 𝐂𝐈 can do nothing to save the people, and he just helplessly watches them die. Meanwhile, 𝐂𝐸 leaves the chaos behind and steps outside, where he's suddenly attacked by 𝐈 and 𝐵oba with a flare gun. However, he remains unaffected and manages to capture them instead. Afterward, 𝐂𝐈 frantically searches for his friends, but they're nowhere to be found. Disheartened and exhausted, he returns to the pawn shop to rest, only to stumble into a deadly trap set by 𝐂𝐸 into his horror. He discovers 𝐈 and 𝐵oba tied up, ready to be hanged before he can react. 𝐂𝐈 is suddenly knocked unconscious and wakes up to find himself hanging and helpless like his friends. 𝐂𝐸 then steps outside, leaving them to slowly suffocate and die in a stroke of luck. 𝐂𝐈 spots a utility knife nearby, which he uses to cut his own rope. But despite his best efforts, he's unable to save his friends in time, and they tragically meet their end. In the meantime, 𝐂𝐸 even encounters the boss's daughter, 𝐬𝐭 outside the pawn shop and puts her into a trance. As 𝐂𝐈 arrives, he witnesses her getting into the car with 𝐂𝐸, fearing that he will kill the girl. Our hero decides to take action. He follows them in his van with an intense chase ensuing. In the end, 𝐂𝐸 comes to a halt when he crashes his car into a truck. Despite sustaining injuries, he still manages to manipulate nearby drivers to block 𝐂𝐈's path. This leads to a massive traffic accident, which slowly moves to 𝐂𝐈 just as he starts to lose hope. The spirits of 𝐈 and 𝐵oba miraculously come to his rescue. They urge him to activate a speed booster installed in the van, which ultimately saves his life. Later on, 𝐂𝐸 flees to the top of a building holding 𝐬𝐭 hostage. 𝐂𝐈 catches up to them but finds him alone. Filled with rage, he begins to attack, showing only to notice 𝐬𝐭 standing on the edge of another building. This leaves him in a serious dilemma. He must choose between stopping 𝐂𝐸 or saving 𝐬𝐭 in the midst of the confrontation. 𝐂𝐸 shoots 𝐂𝐈 and proceeds to mercilessly beat him just when it seems he's going to finish him off. 𝐂𝐈 bravely points out that nobody truly knows 𝐂𝐸's real identity, as he frequently uses fake aliases. This is probably because he has no family members and no one loves him. Hearing this, 𝐂𝐸 even becomes distracted for a second, allowing our hero to launch a counterattack in a daring move. 𝐂𝐈 throws both himself and his enemy off the building, plunging onto the street below. He survives the fall as usual, but 𝐂𝐸 succumbs to it. This finally puts an end to the madness. The scene then shifts to some years later, where 𝐂𝐨 is seen confined to a wheelchair at a busy metro station. He reunites with 𝐬𝐭, who has fulfilled her dream of becoming a stewardess. As they catch up, there's a rare moment of calm. However, it doesn't last long as people discover a child has fallen onto the train tracks. They start running around desperately trying to find a solution, but they fail to come up with a plan, and the train soon arrives. It seemingly runs over the little girl, horrifying everyone. Surprisingly, when the train passes, we see 𝐂𝐨 on the opposite side of the tracks, cradling the rescued child safely in his arms.